الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala we'll be continuing discussing the book Al-Mulakhis Al-Fiqhi by Shaykh Salih Fawzan Hafidhullah ta'ala, and we're still discussing kitab, as he mentioned, Bab fi Ahkam Al-Qatl. So discussing matters pertaining to some of the ruling that pertain to murder and cases of this nature. So we'll pick up from where we had stopped in the last lesson, where we're discussing concerning where the author have clarified regarding the cases of killing a person amdan and also shibilhan, where those cases were covered. Now we discuss concerning al-khata binillahi ta'ala. Aywa.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahi wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi. Qala ma'alif hafidhahullah. Chapter 1, Murder and its Types, page number 522. Hence, Allah exalted be He stated two kinds of manslaughter. First, the first kind of manslaughter is that in which the expiation is obligatory on the murderer and the diya on his agnant relatives. This kind involves killing a believer unintentionally without mistaking him for a disbeliever in the battlefield. The same ruling applies to the case of unintentional killing of one of those with whom Muslims have a peace treaty.
Like peace treaty concerning non-Muslims, that would be non-Muslims.
Yeah.
Aywa.
Second, the second kind of manslaughter is that in which only the diya is obligatory. This kind involves killing a believer unintentionally in the battlefield, mistaking him for one of the disbelieving enemies. In this book entitled Fathul Qadir, the bestowal of the omnipotent, Imam Ash-Shawqani, may Allah have mercy on him, said, Allah exalted be He says, but if he, the deceased, was from a people at war with you, and he was a believer, then only the freeing of a believing slave. Surah An-Nisa, Ayat 92. The verse indicates that in case of killing a believer whose people are in a state of war against Muslims, such as killing a believer in a disbelieving country to which he belonged, thinking he was still a disbeliever, there is no diya to be paid by his murderer. Yet it is obligatory for him, i.e. the murderer, to emancipate a believing slave in expiation. Muslim scholars differ concerning...
Yes, I mentioned regarding concerning that what is stated by Imam Al-Shawqani. So Shawqani, rahimahullah, one of the ulama of Yemen, that was around the time of Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah. So around the 12th century, mid-12th century, that Shawqani, so one of those one of the ulama of Yemen, and I've authored many books. So of those works that he have authored is the book that is called Fathul Qadir. So Fathul Qadir is a book in tafsir. So it's a book that he wrote in tafsir. So you have many works in books in hadith, also by way of explaining Al-Muharrar, or books, another book by one of the grandparents of Ibn Taymiyyah. So Imam Shawqani rahimahullah, that have many books, that and amongst his book is a book that is referred to as Fathul Qadir. Aywa.
Muslim scholars differ concerning the principle on which there is no diya obligatory in case of killing a believer, mistaking him for a disbelieving enemy. Some scholars say that the people of the killed person are disbelievers, so they are not entitled to claim his diya. Others maintain that the blood sanctity and the inviolability of the one who has converted to Islam but has not yet moved from his disbelieving country is still insufficient. This is because Allah exalted be He says, but those who believed and did not immigrate, for you there is no guardianship of them. Surah Al-Anfal, Ayat 72. Yet some other scholars view that the diya is obligatory in this case and that it is to be paid to the Muslims' public treasury. In this respect, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the diya is due in case of mistakenly killing a Muslim whose people are disbelievers, provided he is among them due to a legal excuse, such as being a captive or one who is unable to immigrate. Contrarily, there is by no means diya for mistakenly killing a Muslim who is willingly choosing to remain amongst his disbelieving people who are enemies of the Muslims, as he thus exposes himself to danger without a legal excuse. The proof of the fact that it is obligatory for the perpetrator's agonist relatives to pay the diya in case of manslaughter is derived from the following hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who narrated the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave the judgment that a male or female slave is to be given as diya in compensation for an abortion of a woman from the tribe of Banu Lahyan. Then the woman on whom the compensation had been imposed died. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam ordered that her offspring and her husband are to inherit her property and that her agonist relatives are to pay the diya, blood money, related by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So the hadith states that the diya for manslaughter is to be paid by the perpetrator's agonist relatives, an opinion on which there is consensus among scholars. Perhaps the wisdom behind this opinion is that if the diya for manslaughter is to be paid by the perpetrator, there will be a great financial harm caused to him for a sin he has unintentionally committed. As such, accidents happen recurrently. Thus, if the committer is to shoulder the consequences alone, i.e. paying the diya, it will be regarded as doing him financial injustice. On the other hand, there must be a kind of compensation for the murdered person, as he is considered an inviolable soul, whose killing causes harm to his heirs, especially his family. Hence the wise lawgiver obliges those who stand beside and support the perpetrator to help him in such a matter, i.e. paying the diya, just like the obligation of providing for their needy relatives or freeing their captive relatives. Since one's agonist relatives generally inherit from one when one dies, they have to compensate on one's behalf when one commits manslaughter due to the general principle stating, sharing in affliction in return for getting benefit. However, the expiation is obligatory on the perpetrator of manslaughter for the following reasons. 1. Such expiation is a means of showing respect to the inviolable murdered soul. 2. Manslaughter is by no means void of the perpetrator's heedlessness. And 3. Such expiation does not allow the perpetrator to be completely free from paying his guilt, since the diya is not obligatory upon him as it is paid by his agonist relatives. He must expiate for his offence. That is to say, there are several wisdoms and benefits behind obligating the payment of diya upon the perpetrator's agonist relatives and the expiation for the manslaughter upon the perpetrator in himself. Glory be to Allah, the wise and the knowing, who has ordained for people what benefits them in both their religious and worldly lives. It is important to point out that slaves, poor people, minors, insane people, females, and those of religions different from that of the perpetrator are not considered among the perpetrator's agonist relatives who are obliged to pay the diya, as they are not among those who are supposed to be his supporters and backers. In this connection, the agonist relatives of the perpetrator of manslaughter are allowed to defer the payment of diya for 3 years. Moreover, the magistrate or the one in authority should resort to ijtihad to specify a certain share of the diya for each of them to pay according to their financial states. In doing so, he is to begin with the closest relatives, then the closer, and so on and so forth. Yet, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the diya is not to be delayed if the ruler perceives a benefit in instant payment.
Sayyid al-Akam al-Athar rahimahullah mentioned regarding this discussion, which he ended, which is the case of a person who have killed someone khata'an, by way of it was done, said manslaughter, not intentionally. So then they mentioned the ahkam that goes with this. After the person who have done this act, then there's a consequence, and what is to be paid at the punishment is not for the person to be killed. So in this case of a khata, a murder of a person who have died out of it being done unwillfully, or it was done out of an accident, then in that case that there's still a punishment, where it's a diya. So there's a diya about the person who have done the killing, he's not killed, but rather that there's a payment that is made. So they mention different type of payment that can be made, and also that the family, that they may also share some of that responsibility of the payment. Then they mention the hikmah behind why these things are in place. So that inshallah ta'ala the author of Hafidullah have covered what he discussed concerning the first case regarding al-qatl, which is more severe. So of those cases which have taken off a life of a person, he'll mention different cases where that a person's life is being harmed, either fully by the person being killed or a part of the person being bodily harmed. So now we'll discuss the second case, which is ahkam al-qisas. Aywa.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillahi qala ma'alif Chapter 2, Qisas for murder, page number 527. Muslim scholars unanimously agree on the legality of qisas, legal retribution, for murder in the case of premeditated murder, provided the conditions of such a murder are met. This is because Allah exalted be He says, O you who have believed, prescribed for you is legal retribution for those murdered, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, and the female for the female. Surah Baqarah, ayah 178. Allah exalted be He also says, and we ordain for them therein a life for a life. Surah Ma'idah, ayah 45. This is also stated in the law of the Torah, and we are to abide by the laws of the previous heavenly revealed religions as long as they are not abrogated by our Sharia Islamic law. In addition, Allah exalted be He says, and there is for you in legal retribution saving of a life, or you who people of understanding, that you may become righteous. So Baqarah, ayah 179.
So the author here, rahimahullah, Hafidullah, mentioned regarding concern that in this case, that this act of qisas, that is something which is legislated in our religion of Islam, but also something that was present before. So of those things that was present before in previous law, he mentioned here a Torah. So they mentioned, and then he mentioned that this is from the Sharia of those people who came before us. So as we have mentioned, like in usul al-fiqh, of those things that are covered and discussed regarding concern the faqih understanding, that how he applies cases where they mention as one of those possible sources is the source, a primary or is that a legal source using of the laws of those before. So the laws of those, meaning concerning those legislation of those Anbiya who came before our Prophet Islam, are we allowed to use their law? In cases where, so you mentioned that in these first cases, so the ulama clarify that in cases where in our Sharia, that we have a particular law, and also in the law of theirs is the same. So our can somewhat coincide with theirs, but we can affirm that in their law, this is a practice. So that shows in those cases that their Sharia, our Sharia is coinciding with theirs. So in that cases, both show the permissibility of this particular thing and of that concerning qisas. So in our religion of Islam, that qisas is permitted, and also in the religion of those before, that is also something which is permitted. So it's something which is not strange to this particular religion of Islam, but also previous religion of the other Anbiya. Then he mentioned Aqwal al-Shawkani.
Imam al-Shawkani, may Allah have mercy on him, commented on the aforementioned verse saying, there is saving of life in this ruling ordained by Allah, as when one bears in mind that there is qisas, legal retribution. If he kills another, he will abstain from killing, avoid it, and restrain himself from committing it. Thus, qisas, legal retribution, is considered a means of saving human lives. This verse is a great example of eloquence, as Allah made the qisas for murder, which is death, a means of preserving human lives. This is because such a ruling deters people from killing one another to preserve and maintain their own lives. In this verse, Allah addresses the people of understanding as they are the ones who consider the consequences of their actions and avoid that which may cause anticipated harm. However, those characterized by heedlessness and lightheadedness do not, at their time of rage, consider or listen to the voice of reason regarding the bad consequences that may result from their actions. Some of those murderous people said, I will clear my disgrace with my sword, and let Allah ordain for me whatever He may ordain. Then Allah, exalted be He, shows the reason behind ordaining retribution qisas in case of murder, saying that you may become righteous. Surah Baqarah, Ayat 21. That is to say, avoiding killing because of qisas becomes a means leading to righteousness.
Yes, that's the quote of Shawkani, yeah? So you mentioned you concern the what is mentioned by Shawkani, as we mentioned, that Shawkani, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he has a book in tafsir, which I mentioned that it is stated that it's like a muqtasar. So Shawkani took most of his information from Al-Qurtubi in his tafsir, which the Al-Qurtubi tafsir is of those tafsir that specialize, that supposed to be more regarding discussing ayat al-ahkam. So I mentioned before that in all the mazahib al-ulama, that they have written books regarding tafsir of some type of books of tafsir are specific regarding ayat al-ahkam. So they don't discuss every matter, they more focus on ayat, the verses that relates to al-ahkam al-shar'iyah, and amongst them al-Qurtubi and others. Tahawi rahimahullah, ta'arif Tahawi, Abu Ja'far Tahawi, that also he has a book on that topic. And Tahawi rahimahullah was after all Hanafi, but he has a book on this particular topic, which is a verse that discusses ahkam, and the book is it's in print, and others who have written on that topic. Aywa.
Is that where they take the Jafri school of thought from?
No. That's Abu Ja'far, like his kunya.
Oh, okay.
So his kunya is Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi. But as for Isa, Aywa, min ulama Ahnaf.
In this connection, the Sunnah, prophetic tradition, states that the heir or legal representative of the murdered person would choose one of three choices: to seek qisas, to pardon the murderer in return for the diya, or to pardon him and give it, i.e. diya up, which is considered the best thing to do. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever suffers the murder of a relative, he has the choice between two options. Either he may receive the payment of diya, blood money, or he may choose qisas, legal retribution, related by the group of compilers of hadith. Moreover, Allah exalted be He says, and whoever overlooks from his brother, i.e. the killer, anything, then there should be a suitable follow-up and payment to him, i.e. the deceased heir or legal representative with good conduct. Surah Baqarah, ayah 178.
So from what I mentioned from the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, that in the case of qisas, the person of murder someone, that there's three options. Sah? Ikhwan? There are three options. What are they? The option concerning for the family. So the person who have family been killed or been murdered, that they have three options. If the person have been found guilty. First,
Blood money.
One first, the ayah, الدية, القتل, والعفو. So those are the three choices. So that after the judge said so. So they will decide concerning the person who have committed this crime and is found guilty. Then it will be, then as for the form of punishment, then it fall into one of those three categories. That al-qisas, or it could be ad-diya, or it could be al-afu. Hey, when I made Shaykh, he mentioned concerning al-afu afdal. Al-afu afdal. But that there is one person or one case, maybe with another, but that they mention as being afdal.
Thus, both the verse and the hadith mentioned above indicate that the relative or legal representative of the deceased has the right to choose between carrying out the qisas and receiving the diya. Yet pardoning the murderer and giving up the diya is considered the best thing to be done by the deceased heirs or legal representatives. Allah exalted be He says, and to forego it is nearer to righteousness. Surah Baqarah ayat 237. This is also supported by the hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "No person forgives an act of injustice done to him, but Allah will add to his honor for it." Related by Ahmed, Muslim and At-Tirmidhi.
Yeah, the hadith is sahih and Muslim, so the hadith is authentic, as it narrated by Imam Muslim rahimahullah, showing regarding concerning a person who pardon a person, then that person is elevated, elevated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aywa.
Moreover, foregoing the qisas, legal retribution, is the best thing to do as long as it does not cause evil or any kind of corruption. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, maintained pardoning is not to be applied in the case of assassination.
So not in all cases. That according to Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, some of the ulama, that al-afu, that of the things to be looked into is regarding concerning the mafsada or maslaha that is involved in this, in pardoning the person, to see what are the benefits and the harm, and also in certain cases that the option regarding al-afu that should be left, which is concerning case of they said assassination. Aywa.
As such a kind of murder cannot be guarded against, such as the case of killing in banditry. Moreover, Al-Qadi views that qisas is to be applied on the killer of imams, Muslim rulers, as it is an act of general corruption. The great Muslim scholar Ibn Qayyim commented on the story of the men of Urayna, saying, "Killing through assassination obligates applying the qisas on the killer. Such a legal penalty is not to be dropped by pardoning the killer, and no compensation can be accepted as a substitute. This is the opinion adopted by the scholars of Medina, and it is one of the two opinions attributed to Ahmed. In addition, it is the opinion maintained by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, and he gave a fatwa according to it."
If they mention regarding concern of those cases where they mention of exceptions regarding al-afu that they mention, on qatl al-ghila. So ghila, if the person, like you deceive the person, that's a form of deception, where is that what they translate it as?
Assassination.
It's assassin, but the assassin is the person that is like you set up the person. So to know that, so what's that in English?
It's like you purposely.
So like I know you, I said, come, I'm going to take you around the corner,
yeah,
but the intention is to kill the person. Mm-hmm. So, so you have those, so that's concerning the case of ghila. So it's a form of deception, and deception of deceiving a person, but the intention is to bring about the person's deaths. In those cases, because of that type of severity, because of those type of cases that some mention regarding concerning, without exception, also killing the imam of the Muslim. So imma that they mention, and naqatil al-imma yuqtal haddan. So the person who have killed the imma, those people who are of authority, then also those people to be killed. So killing the head of state. In those cases that the person had, he should be killed. So because of you mentioned the fasad that comes with it.
Yeah.
The fasad that comes with it. So because the person is standing, then those cases are treated more severe. Aywa.
The heirs or the legal representatives of the killed person do not have the right of qisas, legal retribution, unless the following four conditions are met. Number 1, the murdered person must be one of those whose blood is inviolable, as qisas was ordained to save human lives. Thus, if a Muslim kills a disbeliever whose people are in a state of war with Muslims, or if he kills an apostate before the latter declares his repentance, or an adulterer, there will be neither qisas nor diya due on the part of the perpetrator. Yet he is to undergo discretionary punishment for arrogating to himself the ruler's authority. Number 2.
Yes, so they mentioned that in the case of Qisas, for it to be applicable, to apply, you have certain things that has to be in place. So of those things that need to be placed, I already mentioned, shurut al-arba, that so the ulama, they refer to as concerning shurut thubut al-qisas. They refer to as these shurut, these condition, thubut, to affirm al-qisas. So these are the things that the person that have to be looked into regarding that in the case of qisas concerning it's must the person who's killed. Now, so look into the person who's being killed. That is of those that his blood is one which is protected. Is of those whose blood is protected. So that could be a Muslim and also non-Muslim. That there's a treaty between the Muslim and those non-Muslims and the likes. Aywa.
The murderer must be mature and sane. The qisas is a severe punishment that is not permissible to be.
So they mentioned that here concerning that al-ma'soom bi-arba. So those are said to be ma'soom, they fall under 4 groups. So of those ones who are said to be them or ma'soom, that we have a Muslim, male or female, a person who's Muslim, dhimmi, a person living in a Muslim state, mu'ahad, those who have a treaty between them and a Muslim, musta'man, and also those that you have some type of, they have been protected by some of the Muslims. So a non-Muslim who have been given protection by other Muslim. So those are the 4. So we have concerning a Muslim, a dhimmi, from Ali Kitab or the likes, who live in a Muslim state. Then we have concerning that mu'ahad, those who have a treaty between them and the Muslim. And the last, musta'man, those who have been given protection by some of the Muslim. Those are the ones that are said to be that their blood are protected. Aywa.
The murderer must be mature and sane, for qisas is a severe punishment that is not permissible to be applied to a minor or an insane whose case is lacking the condition of intention and premeditation, or their intentions, if any, are deemed void. This is based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, "There are 3 persons whose actions are not recorded: a sleeper until he wakes, a minor until he reaches puberty, and a lunatic until he comes to reason." Imam Muwaffaq-ud-Din Ibn Qudama said, "There is no disagreement amongst Muslim scholars that there is no qisas to be exacted against a minor or an insane. The same applies to anyone in a state of unconsciousness due to an inexcusable reason, such as being asleep or losing consciousness." Number 3.
They mentioned, so they mentioned concerning, but I said to bring that book, but I think I left that, which is the book of one of the Shafi'iyah that I've mentioned regarding, so okay, if a person who have lost sanity, we'll discuss it maybe the next one, we'll try to bring that a person who is drunk, a person who's on drugs, so the person is not per se of full consciousness, what's his hal? Inshallah, the next lesson will bring those cases that they have mentioned. So overall I mentioned that a child, a minor, then that their case, their murder will consider to be, if it's done amd, in those cases, it will be treated as khata. Concerning that, a diya to be given, not per se that the child would be killed. And second case, the person was majnoon. So also it would be a diya in those cases. So something is done if they were to kill someone, but would not be treated. The punishment in those cases would be a diya or the likes, but not per se that their life would be taken, because they don't have the faculties, which is they're below puberty, and second, the person doesn't have reasoning. Aywa.
3. There must be equivalence between the murdered person and the murderer when the action of killing has taken place. In other words, there must be equal in religion and freedom or slavery. That is, the murderer should not be superior to the murdered person due to being a Muslim or being a free person, while the murdered is a disbeliever or a slave. Accordingly, a Muslim is not to be sentenced to death in qisas for killing a disbeliever. To illustrate, the Prophet ﷺ said, no Muslim should be killed in Qisas, legal retribution, for killing a disbeliever.
So so that's one of the cases. So that's concerning of those cases regarding that certain mentioned regarding mukafa bayna al-maqtul wal-qatil. So regarding concerning a person who is killed and the person who is the one who have done the killing, that certain thing have to look regarding concerning that their faith or what religion that they are upon. So those things also regarding the case regarding a hur. So regarding concerning matters regarding deen, wa hurriya, wa rifq, those things kind of somewhat change the equation or the kind of punishment. So are they of the same religion? A Muslim between a Muslim, qisas, a Muslim with a non-Muslim, that there's no qisas. There's no qisas in those cases. Aywa.
Moreover, a free person is not to be killed in Qisas for killing a slave, as Imam Ahmed related that Ali ibn Abu Talib radiallahu anhu said, it is an act of the Sunnah that a free person is to be killed in Qisas, that no free person is to be killed in Qisas for killing a slave.
I mentioned that regarding that case, regarding concerning an yuqtal hur bi'abd, regarding the case of killing a free person because of a free person for a slave. There's a khilaf you mentioned concerning that the view that is taken by some of the ulama. So this is one of the aqwal of the ulama. So another view that that today it is done that a free person can be killed, qisas can be carried out for a free person who have killed an abd. Nam. So they mentioned, so they said that that of the thing they mentioned regarding concerning that one, this statement is mentioned Ali anhu, that is in Ibn Abi Shayba in the Musannaf and also Daraqutni, but also they mentioned for Isnad that a person called Jafir Al Juafi, and he said to be daif. And of those of all the hadith to be daif, Bayhaqi, Ibn Mulaqin, Ibn Abdul Hadi. So they mentioned what is used regarding concerning the statement of Ali that it is weak. So those who mention that it can be done, I mentioned concerning al-hur bil-hur wal-abd bil-abd. So they mentioned that all these group of people that so it's a slave for a free person. All of this it applies that not everything is general unless there's something to say otherwise. And I mentioned that this statement is somewhat daif of Ali, but that's the second view on this matter. And that's the view I mentioned that of those who take this view, the second opinion, that they mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah and also Ibn Uthaymeen of contemporaries, that a hur can be killed for a slave. Aywa.
This is because if the murdered person is not equal to the murderer with regard to the aforementioned aspects, carrying out the qisas on the latter will be more than what the murdered person is entitled to. No preference is to be taken into consideration between the murdered person and the murderer in matters other than those mentioned above. So a handsome person is not preferred to an ugly one. If the former kills the latter, the qisas is to be applied. The same ruling applies when an honorable man kills a mean one, an adult kills a minor, a male kills a female, or a sane person kills an insane one. This is due to the generality of the Quranic verse in which Allah exalted be He says, we ordain for them therein a life for a life. Surah Ma'idah 45. Allah exalted be He also says, the free for the free. Surah Baqarah Ayah 178. Number 4. The murdered person must not be one of the murderer's children or descendants.
That's the fourth. So I mentioned that's concerning. Then I mentioned of those cases that there are sometimes some of the ulama will mention regarding that masala yaqtul al-dhakar bil-untha, that does a man be killed or a woman be killed for a man and vice versa. Now, but I mentioned that the ayat is so it applies. So if a woman wants to kill a man, then she's killed, or vice versa. If a woman wants to murder a man, then also she's killed, as qisas is applied to them. So they mentioned that this is applicable.
That is to say, none of the parents is to be killed in qisas for killing her son, daughter, or any of his/her descendants. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, a parent is not to be killed in qisas for killing his/her child.
They mentioned regarding concern with this case regarding that the author, Hafidullah Ta'ala, that mentioned regarding that would be the parents, mother or father, if they were to kill their child, one of their child, or kill their child, that no qisas is applied. Then they mentioned also extension, which would be the grandchildren. So the grandparents have killed their grandchildren is their qisas. According to that view that they mentioned, if it is asfal ibn wa man asfal or in asfa or in safal, those that are below, meaning concerning grandchildren, that's a view taken by some. Some that's mentioned that the hadith mentioned la yuqtal al walid bi waladi, and that's it for them. That a parent is not killed for murdering their children, and that's it. As for grandchildren and anyone else, it does not apply. That's a second opinion. That's a second view of some of the ulama. Aywa.
Commenting on the aforementioned hadith, Ibn Abdul Barr said, this hadith is well known amongst the scholars of Hijaz and Iraq. This hadith and the other hadiths that carry the same meaning are of the general rule stating the obligation of qisas for murder. This is the opinion adopted by the majority of Muslim scholars. However, the son is to be killed in qisas when killing any of his parents, due to the generality of the Quranic verse in which Allah exalted be He says, prescribed for you is legal retribution for those murdered. Surah Baqarah, ayah 178. Yet, the case when a parent kills any of his/her children is an exception of the aforesaid general ruling according to legal proofs. Hence, if the aforementioned four conditions are met, the relatives or the legal representatives of the murdered person will have the right of qisas. In fact, Allah's ordainment of qisas involves a divine mercy on people as well as a means of saving human lives. As Allah exalted be He says, and there is for you in legal retribution saving of life. Surah Baqarah, ayah 179. So woe to those who claim the obligation of qisas involves brutality and mercilessness. Such people do not consider the cruelty of the offender when he kills an innocent person, spreads panic in the country, widows women, orphans children and women's houses. Such people show mercy towards the murderer rather than the innocent, so woe to their narrow-mindedness and unenlightenment. In this regard, Allah exalted be He says, then is it the judgment of the time of ignorance they desire, but who is better than Allah in judgment for a people who are certain in faith? Surah Ma'idah, ayah 50. The qisas is a retaliatory punishment exacted by the victim or his/her heir or legal representative against the offender, returning like for like or evil for evil. The wisdom behind qisas is that it quenches the flames of wrath and air and the victim of his/her people. Allah exalted be He ordained qisas as a means of restraining regression, extinguishing the flames of wrath in the hearts, letting the murderer taste what he has done to his victim, and saving and preserving human lives. In this connection, the people of the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, the Jahiliyyah, used to exaggerate in retaliation, killing other innocent people in addition to the murderer in revenge. This is undoubtedly a kind of aggression and inflaming of the passions that does not fulfill the purpose of fair retribution. Rather, it is considered a means of more dissension and bloodshed. This is why Islam and its perfect Sharia ordain qisas, through which fair retaliation is executed only against the perpetrator, not against any innocent people. Thus justice, mercy and prevention of bloodshed are achieved. We have previously mentioned the conditions obligating qisas. However, if such conditions are met and thus the qisas is obligated, it is not to be carried out unless some other conditions are fulfilled. Those conditions have been stated by faqirs, may Allah have mercy on them, who call them the conditions for the fulfillment of qisas. There are 3 conditions.
So there's another set of conditions that are to be fulfilled. So that's the first set regarding those shurut, as you mentioned, that thubut al-qisas, then there's a next set of shurut also has to be in place. So you should consider the matter that Islam takes this matter very serious and have all these kind of somewhat things in place to ensure that that lifestyle does not taken like this. So I mentioned regarding concern that's not in those matters regarding that in Jahiliyyah that a practice regarding concerning if a person, family was killed, a lot of revenge killing would take place. Whether if it's one person that have killed someone from that particular family or tribe, then they'll all retaliate against that tribe. So Islam remove all of those things, that a person who have done the killing or a group that are involved, then they are the ones who face the punishment, and the innocents that they are not punished for the crimes of others. Then so you mentioned regarding concern, do we have enough time to cover? You have enough time? Okay, Bismillah.
Number 1, the one who has the right to carry out qisas in retaliation is to be a legally accountable person. That is, one in this case must be adult and sane. Therefore, if the one or one of those entitled to carry out the qisas is a minor or an insane person, one's guardian is not to carry it out on one's behalf. This is because the qisas involves vengeance to quench one's thirst of one's wrath, so its purpose will not be attained if it is taken by others on one's behalf. Therefore, the fulfillment of the qisas must be postponed in such a case, and the offender is to be jailed until the one who has the right of qisas reaches puberty, if he/she is a minor, or regains sanity, if he/she is an insane person. This is because Muawiyah, may Allah be pleased with him, jailed Hudbah ibn Kashram in a case entitled Qisas until the son of the murdered person reached puberty, and none of the Prophet's companions who lived at that time denied the ruling. Hence it was considered a unanimous agreement by the companions contemporary to Muawiyah, may Allah be pleased with him, on that ruling. In such a case, if the minor or the insane person who is entitled to carry out the qisas needs money for expenditure, only the guardian of the insane person has the right to forego the qisas and accept the diya instead. This is because no one knows when sanity is regained, unlike the minor who will grow up and reach puberty anyway.
Hey, what?
Number 2. There must be an agreement among the legal representatives of the murdered person if the qisas is to be carried out. Therefore, it is not permissible for some of them to carry it out single-handedly without the consent of others. This is because fulfilling the qisas is considered a shared undividable right. So if some of them fulfill it on their own initiative, then they transgress the right of the other's representatives without their permission and without being their legal guardian. In this regard, if any of those having the right of qisas is absent, a minor or insane, the fulfillment of qisas is to be delayed until the absent returns, the minor reaches puberty, and the insane regains sanity. Moreover, if any of those entitled to carry out the qisas dies, his heirs are to act in his regard on his behalf. In addition, if some of those entitled to carry out the qisas agree to forego it, then the qisas is no longer applicable.
Yes, the matter is a shared matter between the family members.
Yeah.
There'll be a shared matters.
Oh, there's a bit more.
Huh?
There's a little bit more to the truth.
Okay.
The people entitled to carry out the qisas are all the heirs of the deceased, men or women, and children or adults, whether through blood or marital ties. However, some scholars maintain that the right of fulfilling or foregoing the qisas is restricted to the deceased's agnated relatives. The latter is the opinion adopted by Imam Malik and one of the opinions reported to be adopted by Imam Ahmed. It is also the opinion maintained by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy.
Hey, so concerning that, regarding concerning the al-qisas, there has to be a shared matter between family members, or those particular family members. That I mentioned that al-afu, regarding if they choose now to pardon a person, there's not, he mentioned that khilaf between the ulama regarding who are those ones who have that responsibility. So it's all those that they mention is the ones who are the more closer family members, and not per se all of them. So in-laws would not be included. So as I mentioned, a khilaf between the ulama, Imam Malik, Ibn Taymiyyah, Riwayat Ahmed, that all concern is the asaba. Those are the more closer relatives, that they are the ones who can decide regarding al-afu, pardoning of the person. But regarding concern a person's debt, qisas, they need a consensus between all of those who are inheritors. Aywa.
Number 3. Executing the qisas should never reach persons other than the offender. For Allah exalted be He says, and whoever is killed unjustly, we have given his heir authority, but let him not exceed limits in the matter of taking life. Indeed, he has been supported by the law. Surah Al-Isra, ayat 33. Therefore, if the action of carrying out the qisas exceeds the limits, it is considered excessiveness, which is forbidden according to the aforementioned noble Quranic verse. Accordingly, if the qisas is to be applied to a pregnant woman or a woman who is conceived after being liable for the qisas, who conceived after being liable for the qisas, she is not to be killed in qisas until she gives birth to her baby. This is because killing such a pregnant woman causes the death of the fetus despite its innocence. Allah exalted be He says, and no bearer of burdens will bear the burden of another. Surah Al-An'am, ayah 164. Hence the pregnant murderer is not to be killed in retaliation unless she gives birth to her baby. Furthermore, after she gives birth to the baby, if there is another woman to breastfeed and take care of the infant, the qisas can be applied to the mother, as there will be no barrier preventing the execution of qisas then. Otherwise, carrying out the qisas is to be delayed for 2 years until the mother weans her infant. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, if a pregnant woman intentionally murders someone, she is not to be killed in qisas until she gives birth and cares for her baby. And if a woman commits adultery and becomes pregnant, she is not to be killed as legal punishment until she gives birth and cares for her baby. Related by Ibn Majah. Moreover, the Prophet ﷺ said, addressing the woman who confessed committing adultery, go home until you give birth. Later, when she gave birth to the baby and came back to the Prophet ﷺ, he said to her, go home until you wean him. Thus, the two hadiths, as well as the Quranic verse mentioned above, indicate the obligation of delaying the qisas for murder if the perpetrator is pregnant. And this is unanimously agreed upon by Muslim scholars.
So for the judge or the qadi that look at the matter, that he has to also verify that if qisas is to be applied upon a female, what's her condition regarding pregnancy? Is she pregnant or not? So that's something has to be verified by way of the qadi before applying the punishment of qisas in a case of a female. Aywa. So they show the mercy of Islam regarding the author mentioned that not punishing those who are not deserving to be punished. So that child is not to be punished. They did not per se commit an act or did part of the act, so they are not to be punished. So Islam gives the woman, the lady who's pregnant, that she's allowed to give birth, so she's not to be punished until she have given birth, and also after birth to see regarding the welfare of the child. Is the child able to can be breastfed and to be taken care of by another lady? Then that's put in place. Or if not, then the mother, she will look after the child, wean the child up for 2 years. Then after, the state will take the child, and then the mother would be killed. Aywa.
Such obligation is a proof of the perfection and justice of Sharia, as it maintains the fetus in their mother's wombs and prohibits causing them any harm. Moreover, Sharia observes the right of the children as well as the weak, protecting them against any harm and providing them with what preserves their lives.
And so it shows that regarding concern, the fetus is considered to be a person and to be respected, a life. So it shows regarding concern, the fetus. So cases regarding abortion, that those cases have to be looked at carefully, as that fetus is considered to be a child. It's considered to be a life. It's considered to be a life. Aywa.
So all praise be to Allah for endowing us with such a lenient, perfect, comprehensive Sharia that encompasses all people's interests. Executing the qisas for murder has to be in the presence and under the supervision of the ruler or his representative or the one in authority to avoid injustice and ensure the legality of execution. Moreover, the tool used for executing the qisas for murder must be quite sharp, such as a sword or a knife, for the Prophet ﷺ said, when you kill in qisas, do it in a good manner, i.e. gently and mercifully.
Aim to answer regarding concerning this matter, regarding concerning that the weapons, we have two things that is mentioned regarding in the presence of the head of state. A khilaf between the ulama regarding concerning that those who witness, does the head of state has to be present, that they mentioned that or is a representative of him, then is that a must? Some mention that's not a must. The person like the judge or a representative is there or people witnessing, but it's not a requirement that the actual head of state has to be present to witness the person, this act being carried out, this act being carried out. Then have a discussion regarding how many people needs to be present. So you have different numbers that are mentioned regarding. They mentioned ta'ifa, that a ta'ifa, that a group should be present, but how many people constitute a ta'ifa? They have a khilaf between the ulama on that matter. How many people need to be present at when this act is being carried out? So you have those that, but practice today that we find concerned in practice today, few Muslim countries, illa man rahimallah, that actually carry out this type of punishment. Illa man rahimallah, so you maybe have maybe one. So few countries who does this, and in most cases when it is done, the head of state is not present. The head of state is not present in those cases. That it does occur regarding people being this punishment being carried out. The head of state is not present, but you might have concerning people from the judicial body may be present. The people are the judges or representative, they are present, but not per se the head of state nor the governor of the city. They are not they are not per se themselves present. As for the weapon, they discussed regarding concerning the weapon that is used to kill, that the person, I mentioned that something which is a sharp end, which is in most cases the person that the person that they'll chop off his head. So the discussion between the ulama discussed concerning that that's clear regarding concerning of the person being beheaded. Then the case concerning that the person being shot. So like the person, rather than beheading the person, that the punishment, the weapon that is used is a bullet. Is this allowed? So of those who mentioned it is allowed. That's something that the person is shot until that what is the objective, the goal is to take the person's life, to kill the person or to take his life. So sword or if a gun is used also, then it achieve the same objective. So some give some permissibility to other things being used, which is the person being shot. That in one country, I think there, 8 years ago, out of a country, that a person did something with children, and the punishment by way of the judge is for the person to be killed. And the way it was done was that someone went and shot him in the head, which means that by way of the punishment for the person to be killed, but they shot him until he died. So you have a discussion. So discussion is allowed. Of those who mentioned, it is allowed. It is allowed, but also to have that discussion between some of the ulama.
Thus, it is prohibited to execute the qisas using a blunt tool, as this is considered excessiveness in killing. If the person entitled to execute the qisas is able to perform it...
It's a blunt in the sense like the person using like a baseball bat and to beat the person to death. Until the person died. And no, that's not to be done. So something like I said that a quick death. So it will be quick death type of thing. Then those are the things that are discussed. As for blunting, you call the person, that's the person to be to suffer a lot, then no. Aywa.
Was I prescribing? If the person entitled to execute the qisas is able to perform it in the prescribed legal manner, he is allowed to do it. If not, he is to be ordered by the ruler or the one in authority to appoint another person to perform it on his behalf. As for retaliation, the most preponderant opinion among scholars is that the offender is to be punished in a way equal to the harm he caused to the victim. This is because Allah exalted be He says, and if you punish an enemy, O believers, punish with an equivalent of that which you were harmed. Surah An-Nahl, Ayah 126. Allah exalted be He also says, so whoever has assaulted you, then assault him in the same way that he has assaulted you. Surah Baqarah, Ayah 194. In addition, the Prophet ﷺ ordered that the head of a Jew should be crushed between two stones in retaliation for crushing the head of a girl of the Ansar, the supporters. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the Quran and the principles of justice agree that the offender, before being killed in retribution, is to be retaliated against in the same way he did the victim before murdering him. That was applied by the Prophet ﷺ, and it is proved through the Quran, Sunnah, and the tradition of the companions. Hence, if the perpetrator has cut off the hand of the victim and then killed him, he is to be punished in the same way he acted, i.e. his hand is to be cut off and then he is to be killed in retribution. Similarly, if the perpetrator has killed the victim with a stone or has drowned him or anything of the kind, he is to be punished in the same way before killing him. Still, the deceased's heir or legal representative who is entitled to carry out the qisas has the right to forego such retaliation for injuries and make the qisas restricted to cutting off the head of the offender with a sword, and this is more favourable. In this respect, if the offender has killed the victim with an unlawful means, he is to be killed with a sword in qisas. Nowadays, the act of killing with a sword in qisas can be replaced by killing by shooting, provided it is performed by someone who shoots accurately.
Okay, so the Shaykh and Assam will touch on those points regarding. So he mentioned regarding concern a person is killed according to the way that he had killed. So the person, he mentioned the person chopped the person's hand off, then he killed him. Is it a must that one have to then do something similar? Chop the person's hand off, then kill him. Or, so those things are the ijtihad of the hakim. That's the ijtihad of the head of state to use these method, or just have the person killed without have to do something similar to the way that he have killed the person. So those things go back to the ijtihad of the courts or the judicial system. So that inshallah the author have discussed regarding concern these matters regarding al-qisas, that what are those conditions that has to be in place for regarding taking or applying this law of applying this particular punishment. So that inshallah will end for today and continue next week. Wabillahi ta'ala tawfiq.